So, you've managed to secure a new client and the work you produce is great. However, every time you go into your project files, you get lost and can never find what you're looking for. I'm going to be showing you a really simple and efficient system. This is a system I've mixed together having worked as a graphic designer for the last 5 years in a number of different roles, taking you from a cluttered mess into an organized beast. Before we get into it, the system has 5 stages, each of which will have its chapters, so feel free to skip sections if needed. The stages are as follows. Stage 1, project file itself. Stage 2, links. Stage 3, resources. Stage 4, supplied. And Stage 5, superseded. I'll explain each of the folders and the functionality on how it should be used. Feel free to take the ideas that I talk about and tweak them for your own workflow. So as you can see, I've got the client project open here. This is just a dummy, so I've populated it with some generic placeholder files. And the first thing to mention here is the client project itself. As you can see, has the 4 folders as well as a number of different project files. Now these project files should always be kept outside of these 4 folders. It just helps declutter things. The first thing to mention is obviously you need to have some sort of proper naming structure. I like to keep things quite simple by using the client's name and whatever the project file is. So for instance, as you can see here, we've got client project. This is where the client name will go, followed by a logo. And this is an Illustrator file. So yeah, if I need the logo for whatever reason, I know it's here. Then we've also got portrait templates, video interviews, video introduction, as well as client project A4 brochure. As you can see, there's 2 video files. They're both working on different videos. One is interviews, one is introduction. I find it helps just to keep things a bit separate sometimes instead of having, for instance, if you have like 3 different brochures, separate those brochures out and it just makes working on things a little bit easier. Right, let's talk about the first folder, which is links. So just to explain the importance of the links folder, I think if you're familiar with design and any sort of creative work, you would know that when you create a new video project in Premiere Pro or After Effects or wherever it might be, the stock footage or the footage that you use is always created as a proxy. And because of that, wherever you've imported it from is what Premiere Pro is going to reference. So if that file path changes, the link is going to be broken. So the reason why we have a links folder is so that the file path can never change. It's always in the same place and all of your links are always connected. And just to make sure you guys understand this, the links folder is where you would keep all of your sort of peripheral assets. Things like imagery, audio recordings, footage, etc., icons, whatever it might be, any vector assets you're working with, all of that stuff should be saved within the links. Now, if you are working on a big project and you have a lot of these links that you need to be saving somewhere, it's always good to separate them through folders. It makes your life a lot easier when navigating and trying to find certain things. And now obviously, if you find any new imagery that you want to add in, save it within your links. Links is probably going to be your most important folder. And reason being is all of these project files here, they reference different images, video footage, whatever it might be through the links folder. Now, the reason why everything's sort of built around this enclosed ecosystem is because obviously you don't want any of your links to break. And, from previous experience, I found that, things get moved around, links break, and if you come back to a project, that's it, it's done. So with this system, it's quite hard to break links because everything's within its ecosystem, everything is there. Doesn't matter if you add to it, it's always going to be there. Right, next folder, resources. The resources is a folder where any information provided to you from the client or any information that you deem useful for your project is usually saved in here. So for instance, if we just click on this, I would always save any sort of communications I've had with the client through into this folder. Sometimes there are details within email chains that are quite useful, so I tend to save them here for quick references. Things like the project brief itself is always handy to keep within the same sort of ecosystem, and obviously any brand guidelines that they send across to you. Things like fonts can be rare, but sometimes they do supply these to you saying, we have a license to use this font, can you please use it in our materials? And obviously you don't want to lose those fonts, and it's always good to save them in. There's not really much else to it apart from anything that you obviously deem important information to your project. Pop it in here. Supplied sounds pretty straightforward, and in all honesty it pretty much is. This folder is where you would save all of your exports, any final versions of anything that you've created should be in here, and also anything that you send to the actual client should be within this folder. If I just open up this folder, as you can see, there are, similar to the links folder, there are a number of different folders within the supplied, simply just making it easier to separate the different types of materials that you're creating. For example's sake, as you can see, my project files are such and such, and I've tried to separate them in a similar manner. So we've got A4 brochure separated out, diagrams, emails, portraits, video work, the logo. It just makes everything a lot easier to find. So one of the reasons why it's quite important to make sure your project files are named correctly is so that when you're exporting, you don't need to fiddle around with renaming it. You can just hit export and know that it's going to be called the correct thing. And if you ever get confused as to sort of what project file links to which supplied document or video file, the name should tell you. So let's say, for instance, here I've created this client project A4 brochure. I've exported it, and inside the A4 brochure folder, we can see client project A4 brochure. So we can see that this PDF is an export of this InDesign file. And then obviously, depending on how many layers there are to your project and to your sort of what you need to deliver to your client, you can either dump everything in one if there's only like one or two things, or if you have a number of different things, it's always good to separate them out. So the Superseded folder itself, yeah, it's just an easy way to keep a backlog of previous versions of the projects. But Superseded is essentially relevant and should only be created when there are projects that have iterations. Now, what I mean by this is, so let's say you're working for a client and they have an advert that they produce annually. In order to make sure you have previous versions of that so you never lose anything, is to create the Superseded folder. As I mentioned before, this is only relevant if an updated version is needed. So if we just click it into here, what I tend to do is sort of create folders based on the month and the year, and this really helps me sort of break down when certain things were made. So to give you an example of how this might work, let's say we have a request to update the client brochure. We know that this version is already out of date because they've already sent through the updated information and they've told us what needs to be changed. Let's take the A4 brochure and let's paint a picture and say that the client has now, they're going to publish in next year's one. They've got some updated information. Can you please make amends? So the first thing I will do is take this InDesign file, open up the Superseded folder and create a new folder in here for when that last InDesign file was exported. So let's just say that was in October 2023. We would paste the InDesign file in there, and then we would go into the supplied and grab the PDF. This way we have both the project file and the export within the same place. So if you ever did need to come back to this version of the document, you have it. Then, as per usual, you don't need to create anything new here. You would just open up the project file, make the amends the client has told you about, then export it into the supplied A4 brochure and be done with it. And that's pretty much it. And you could do this for all of the different project files you have. So Superseded. So just to be a bit more granular, if you wanted to separate things out by the type of project it was, let's say you could create a folder, and instead of just having the month and year, you could have A4 brochure, October. You could split it up like this. And then this way it might give you a bit more oversight over what different things are, especially if you have a number of different copies and you might have like a video, introduction video, different versions of that for interview October 2023. So just to split things up a bit, make it a bit easier for you to understand what is what. Yeah, that's pretty much Superseded. So just to summarize everything that we've kind of spoken about, what you want to do is when you get a new client, is to create a client project folder. Within that folder, you want to save all of your project files and create 4 folders called links, resources, superseded, and supplied. The links folder is any sort of footage, imagery that is used in sort of your InDesign files, your Premiere folders, anything that needs to be linked to a project file should go in this folder. Resources, any information that the client has sent to you, any useful information like guidelines, brief, communications, fonts, etc. should be in here. Superseded, any previous iterations of the exports that you've created. So if there's a yearly release of something, you would save the previous versions within Superseded. Supplied, pretty straightforward. Anything that is sent to the client, any final versions, all of those go in here. And then inside the client project folder itself, a list of all of your project files. Now, hopefully that made sense. I find the wording and some of the way that I've labeled things might be a bit different to how you might, but the concepts are the same. So feel free to relabel things for whatever works easier for you. Hopefully this video has helped you. I know that, definitely new designers and myself, when I first started, if I had a clear system on how I organized my files, I think I would have been a lot more efficient as a designer. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully this video has helped some of you guys get more organized with your projects. I personally had no structure to my files when I first started, and I know that if there was a structure, it would have streamlined my workflow a lot, saving me a lot of time and hassle. If this did help you, it would be great to hear about it down below. Till the next one, peace.